Good morning, everybody. It is Mrs. Hawley, and today we are going to look at the Mayan Empire, which lasted from around 2600 BCE to 250 CE, so a very long time. And we're going to look at how the geography within the Mayan Empire either helped them or limited their expansion and interaction within their empire. We're going to look at the way they governed themselves, and we're going to look at their golden age. So the first thing we want to do is label our map that you have on page 39 in your workbook. So you are going to please identify the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Pacific Ocean. I did mine in blue, just so I remember that's water. Then I labeled Mexico right here. Your map shows more territory than this one, but that's okay. You're going to want to identify the Yucatan Peninsula, what is modern-day Belize, and Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And all of this territory in green here made up the extent of the Mayan Empire. What you can do if you want on your map is use the drawing feature and the squiggly line and then put an outline maybe around the whole empire. So it's just easier for you to see. So just remember that this is part of Mexico here, it was. And then you've got Central America here, which is much more visible on your map in your workbook. So if you need to, please stop the video, label your map, and then press play when you're ready to begin with the notes. All right, what we want to do first is talk about the geography of the Mayan Empire. Look at these ruins. Oh, they're so cool. Anyway, let's look at the geography. So we're still on page 39. So we know that the empire stretched from southern Mexico in the north, those were the lowlands, to the highlands of modern day Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and Honduras. The lowlands included the coastal plain along the Pacific Ocean, very hot climate, and the tropical rainforest in the Yucatan Peninsula. So as you can see, you've got quite a variety in the geography. You've got territory that is rather low. You've got mountainous areas that are higher up. You've got a warm coastal plain and a tropical rainforest as well. So you can already see there's going to be a lot of variation. The southern lowlands, in fact, get as much as 160 inches of rainfall per year. And they have the Usumacinta River, pardon me, my Spanish is kind of old, which they did use for transportation a little bit through their empire. All right, we're going to go on to page 40. 160 inches of rainfall. That's pretty impressive and wet. All right, we're going to look at the highlands, and there were valleys and volcanoes, and this is part of the Sierra Madre range of mountains that runs actually all the way through the west coast of the United States down into Mexico. So you've got valleys, you've got volcanoes. The highlands were actually prone to suffering tsunamis, Remember, a tsunami is a big wave that comes ashore, usually after an earthquake, which they also suffered from, or some kind of interruption in the ocean, which causes the tsunami to form and then go on to shore. And volcanoes, so they had volcanic eruptions periodically, earthquakes. Yeah, quite a variety. We know that the soil in the highlands is very fertile, though, and the climate is much cooler. Remember, the lowlands, we said, is very hot. So the highlands were better for farming. In the lowlands, they were able to produce maize, which is what we now call corn, squash, beans, chili peppers, cacao, cotton, and sisal, which is used to make fabric and rope. And what you should know, actually, is that all of these things are native to the Americas, not to Europe. You have to remember that what's going on in the Mayan Empire is completely and absolutely separate from what was going on in the Eastern Hemisphere, Europe, Africa, Asia. The Western Hemisphere had no interaction with the East. So they developed completely independently. They are not going to benefit from any of the great features that the Greeks and the Romans came up with. Their cultures developed completely independently. The highlands have a lot of precious metals and minerals. So obsidian, which is a stone, jade, a beautiful green stone, cinnabar, hematite, and many others. And these are products that they used to trade with other people and with each other throughout their empire. All right, this is important. Because the geography was so diverse, the Mayans are going to create a lot of independent city-states. Now remember, an independent city-state is their own little, almost like a little country of their own. It's the city and the surrounding farming community. And usually their cities were built around their ceremonial centers. Here's an illustration of a Mayan city, El Mirador, at its high point. Look at these buildings, look at all the people. Absolutely amazing. All right. You have 2 questions on page 40, so let's look at those. Question number 1 asks you to identify. Remember, that's just tell. So identify 2 geographic features that had an impact on the ancient Mayans. So I'd like you to stop the video, go look at what we talked about so far about geography and what was important or impactful, and just list 2 features, 2 geographic features. So press stop now or pause, and then press play to review. All right, my friends, welcome back. What 2 geographic features did you guys pick? I picked heavy rainfall and diverse geography, which is a little vague. So there we have simply identified. Here is not the point where you describe. Why am I asking you these silly questions? Because this is what you have to do on the Regents exam, on the short answer questions. You have to identify and describe. So question 2 says, describe how these 2 geographic features impacted the ancient Mayans. So for each one that you used, now you want to describe how they impacted the Mayans. Okay, so stop the video Type your response and then press play and we'll review. All right, friends, welcome back. All right. Remember, your answers are going to be different than mine, and they should be at all times because everybody thinks differently. It doesn't make you wrong. Don't change your answers to suit mine, especially if you didn't pick these two features, because that would be silly. So my first one was heavy rainfall. So how did heavy rainfall impact the Mayans? So I said that the heavy rainfall was what fed the rivers that the Mayans used for transportation. And that was what allowed them to trade with not only parts of their empire, but with others. So there I described the impact of the heavy rainfall. Okay. Now, my second one was diverse geography. So, different geographic features. So, I said the diverse geography, like the mountains, like the volcanoes, like the valleys, like the lowlands and highlands, is what led to the Mayas developing independent city states, like the Greeks. Okay. Remember, the Greeks did that too. If you remember, the geographic feature that led to the development of Greek city-states, it was the mountains, because so much of Greece was mountainous. All right, now we're going to look at the Mayan government. So we're on page 41. So around 300 BCE, the Mayans adopted a monarchy, sort of. Actually, it would be a small group. So they adopted a system of government with rule by nobles and kings. So kind of an aristocracy more than a monarchy. Each city-state had its own ruling family. So remember, city-states have their own government specific to their state. Some city-states did control smaller ones, and they ruled them indirectly. They let them govern themselves, but collected taxes or tribute from them. Tribute is money that you pay to acknowledge that they are actually in charge. How very nice. Let me get rid of this thing. All right. The king was an absolute monarch and ruled by divine right, which we normally think of in Chinese dynasties, but that's okay. Divine right literally means that the people believed and the king believed that he received his right to rule directly from God. And the Mayan king believed that he was a descendant of a god. So he had godlike powers. The king had a council of advisors which helped run each city-state. Ooh, quick question. What other civilization did we learn about that had independent city-states? I already told you this earlier. It was in your notes. Do you remember? If you say Greece, you're right. All right. The king was responsible for appointing a supreme military leader. And the Mayans frequently waged war against not just one another, but against others in order to gain captives. They did human sacrifices, and they also, the losing side would become slaves. The high priest determined ceremonial dates and when festivals would occur, and they believed that the high priest could predict the future. That's pretty cool. So we're going on to page 42. That was my doggy sneezing, Maggie. Anyway, being a king was hereditary. So if your father was the king, then the oldest son would be the next to become king, and then his oldest son would be. And we said that they had absolute power. The advisors, the king's advisors, would be chosen from the nobility, and that also is hereditary. So if you were a noble family in a city state, you would serve, and you're a man, adult man, you could advise the king, and then your eldest son, when you passed away or gave up your duties, was then next in line to be an advisor to the king. We already said that the priests were responsible for running the ceremonies and festivals and telling the future. Merchants and traders, people who conducted trade within the empire, not only were some of them just regular old merchants and traders, but sometimes they were used as spies to carry information from one city state to another. That's kind of cool. I imagine if you got caught, however, that was not pretty cool. What do we know about the Mayans? That's right, human sacrifice. Yay. The majority of the people within the Mayan Empire, honestly, were farmers, just regular peasant farmers. They had to pay taxes to the king, and also provide labor to build those beautiful temples as well. All right, looking at religion, we're still on 42 underneath the social triangle. The Maya were polytheistic. Remember, poly means many. So that means the Mayans were believers in many gods. They also believed in a kind of form of animism. They believed everything contained a spirit. That's very traditional. They believed that the gods and goddesses were very, I say, fluid, meaning they could morph together with each other and share characteristics of each other. They didn't have specific personalities like the Greek gods or the Roman gods, which were very distinct, individual, and had their own characteristics. Many of the Mayan gods had characteristics of both humans and animals. And one of the reasons why they conducted human sacrifices was to please the gods, to get them to favor them, to make sure that crops grew, to make sure that they were successful in battle. And they didn't just sacrifice humans, they also did sacrifice animals as well. I guess, yay. Okay, let's look at trade. The Mayans had a very advanced trade system. They had many trade routes. Some of them were very short, some were medium, and some were very long. And that provided them with a lot of markets for their goods and services. So it's good to have trade routes. We're going to see that, well, we know that the Romans had extensive systems of roads, thousands of miles, and that is what helped them become very prosperous through trade and taxation and being able to move the military around. Same thing with the Mayans. Their trade systems were pretty extensive, and that allowed them to become pretty wealthy. They did not, however, have a uniform currency, so prices were not the same all over the empire. It varied from place to place, and the further away you get from where the goods come from, the more expensive things were. So it was also based on distance. Obsidian was very precious. It's a form of volcanic glass, and the Mayans sold that, traded it, and they used it for weapons and for necklaces and headdresses, bracelets, all kinds of things, as well as in rituals. One thing to remember about the Mayans, they never invented the wheel. Let me repeat that. The Mayans, who had these beautiful temples, a huge, extensive empire, never invented the wheel. So they had to travel either by sea or over land carrying goods. So a lot of their trade was done through rivers or through the oceans. Remember, they've got the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, as well as the Gulf of Mexico to use for trade. Again, here's a good example of how the Western Hemisphere developed completely independently from the Eastern Hemisphere. The wheel was invented, right, in the early river valley. I believe the Sumerians invented the wheel. And so that knowledge stayed in the Eastern Hemisphere. It did not spread to the Western Hemisphere. So the Mayans, who built this enormous empire and had such a amazing culture, they did it without the wheel. Pretty impressive. All right, so there's a little information on page 43 that chocolate from cocoa trees was introduced to the rest of the world by the Mayans. And the Mayans actually used chocolate as a gift, and it was used in trade. So they used it to barter. I saw that and I had to include it because Mrs. Hawley loves her chocolate. So thank you, Mayans. So let's look at the Golden Age. And their Golden Age lasted from about 300 to 300 to 900 CE. So that's about the period when the Roman Empire was at its height, 300. And then after the collapse of the Roman Empire. So that puts it into some context with what was going on in the rest of the world. So the Mayans invented hieroglyphics, kind of like what the Egyptians did, where they had pictures that stood for objects and sounds. Some of the Mayan pictures stood for ideas, concepts like happiness. And they would carve the hieroglyphics on stone columns and in record books that they called a codex. And here's some of the different symbols, pictures, not symbols really, that they used. I just think that's really neat. They were very advanced in astronomy. They knew all of the moon phases. They were able to predict the sun and moon eclipses. They created a 365-day calendar that they used for harvesting. They actually had two different calendars. This calendar, the 365-day calendar, was used for knowing when to plant crops, when to harvest them, and plant again. The second calendar was a 120-day calendar that they used for religious events. Now, the next thing is mathematics. The Mayans invented a number system based on units of 20. The Mayans are going to be one of the first to use 0 in their number system. the symbols that they used, which I've shown here, were meant to be shells or beans or sticks. And this little guy here says, I'm a merchant who sells obsidian throughout the Mayan Empire, and I use this number system to keep track of my sales. So here we have a little activity on page 44 that I created for you just to experience the Mayan system of mathematics. So here's one set. You've got 2 dots and 2 bars plus 3 dots. So go back to the other page, the last slide, and I want you to tell me what these two would be added together. You can then add circles and thick lines to create your answers if they call for both. All right, so I want you to do this one and the second one. This is an addition, and here you have a subtraction. So stop the video, go back to the slide before, and I want you to figure this out. And trust me, if I can do it, anyone can do it. All right, and then press play when you're ready to review. All right, my mathematical Mayans, what you got? What's the first one? I got 15 for the first one, so 3 bars. And then for the second one, I got 3. So 1, 2, 3, and these are 5, 10, 15. I'm hoping that's right, but as you all know, I am very bad at math, and I'm probably really bad at Mayan math too, but it was kind of fun to figure out. All right, let's move on. Recreation. Oh, he's so cute. Look at this guy kicking the ball. They had their own ball game, and they used this solid rubber ball, and they would have to hit it through a stone ring, which was placed up higher than human height, but they couldn't use their feet. They could only use their elbows, their wrists, their hips, their stomachs, their thighs, but not their hands and not their feet. And they would have almost like an arena made for this particular ball game. And people would come, and it didn't matter what social class you were, and they would gamble on who was going to win and by how many points. People could actually win or lose slaves or even their land and homes, which they could bet. Here's the thing about this Mayan ball game. They did take their sport very seriously. The losing team was usually sacrificed, and then the captain of the team would be beheaded. So these players are not just playing for fun or for money. They were playing for their lives. So it kind of gives a different perspective of this game. Let's look at why the Mayans declined. We know that Mayan culture thrived for just around 600 years. But by 900 CE, their cities were abandoned, and nobody knows exactly why. They didn't leave any records of why their empire declined. So here's some possible causes of their decline. The populations of the cities maybe got too large and they were unable to provide enough food for everyone. That's a possibility. There could have been periods of drought, which may have caused massive crop failures. That is a possibility for the decline of the empire. We know they fought wars, and these were very impactful wars, lots of people died. It was very close hand-to-hand fighting, so there were a lot of casualties. We know that there may have been invaders from central Mexico who helped destroy the city-states. This guy's so out of here. All right. Now we are done looking at the Mayas. So we are going to do a quick review on page 46. So let's look at these. So it's either Rome, Maya, or both. So the first to use the concept of zero and create an accurate 365-day calendar. Is this the Maya, the Romans, or both? So you're going to stop the video and you're going to go and draw a shape, draw a circle or whatever. Okay, put it over the number that you want to choose. Make sure you put it, send it to back, make it transparent. And I filled mine with yellow. So stop the video, answer the question, and we'll come back. All right, friends, what did you get? Who was the first to use the concept of zero and create a 365-day calendar? Was it the Mayans, the Romans, or both? Yay, if you picked the Maya, you are correct. Good job. Okay, let's look at number 2. Population grew too much to take care of. Is this the Mayan Empire, the Roman Empire, or both? Turn the video off, answer the question, and then press play to review. All right, friends, welcome back. Whose population grew too much to take care of? Is it the Maya, the Romans, or both? I hope you picked 3 because it was both. At least that's what we can assume about the Maya, that their populations in their cities grew too large, and that might have been one of the causes of their decline. All right, let's look at 3. Which empire fell because they couldn't push out invaders? The Maya, the Romans, or both? So stop the video, copy paste your circle there, pick an answer, and then press play when you're ready to review. Okay, friends, what'd you pick? Which empire fell because they couldn't push out invaders? The Mayans, the Romans, or both? I picked 3, both. We know that one of the possible causes of the decline of the Maya was invaders from the north. So that could be. So I'm going to go with both. We know that the Romans were attacked. The Western Empire was attacked by many barbarian tribes, Germanic tribes mostly, and that was one of the reasons they fell. I got to say, good job. A lot shorter than our last few. And so we're good. We're going to stop here. And until next time, I will talk to you again.